The night sea stretched like a dark mirror, reflecting the golden lights from the yacht Splendour as it pitched among the waves. Wind whipped across the deck. The clink of glasses and the thud of hurried footsteps dissolved into the darkness. By morning, as the sun reddened the water, Natalie Wood's body was found drifting near the shores of Catalina. The eyes that once enthralled millions now closed in silence. Hollywood was stunned. The girl who had become Maria in West Side Story, who had stepped onto the screen with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, suddenly stood at the center of a tragedy at sea. Yet her passing was not merely an accident on the water. It was wrapped in questions, blank spaces no one could fill, and one name whispered again and again. Robert Wagner, the husband, the lover, the man who had vowed to protect her, and who was present on that fateful night. The pathos lay not in noise, but in paradox. A woman afraid of water, haunted by the sea, meeting her end in the waves. Contradictory stories from friends aboard, the echo of a murky argument, gaps in time together, they spun a dense fog around the truth. People asked, was it only a fatal misstep? Or the result of a love that broke and mended too many times, caught in a whirlpool of jealousy and silence? And if so, why did no one intervene? Why did no one hold her back when Natalie stepped out of the deck's light into boundless darkness? To understand the tragedy of that night, we have to go back to the beginning. Natalie Wood's childhood, where the first fractures in her soul began. Before she became the silver screen darling, Natalie Wood was just a little girl named Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko, born in 1938 to Russian immigrant parents in California. They carried American dreams, but the home was steeped in unease. Her father was hot-tempered, quick to anger. Her mother Maria burned with a single ambition, to turn her daughter into a star and change their fate. Even before she could read, Natalie was pushed onto film sets. At 4, she was already appearing in small pictures, standing before the camera with wide eyes and a reluctant smile. Each time the director called cut, her mother would whisper, "You must be perfect, you must shine." Natalie's childhood slipped by without parks or playdates. It was auditions, carefully chosen dresses, and the tight gaze of a mother tracking her every move. Behind the studio lights, fear crept into the little girl's heart. People say Maria planted a chilling obsession in Natalie's mind, the curse of water, a belief that the sea swallowed weak souls. From then on, Natalie recoiled at the sight of waves, trembling whenever she neared the water's edge. And yet, paradoxically, that very fragility let her pour raw feeling into her performances, convincing audiences she truly lived inside her characters. Natalie grew up in public adoration, while inside there was the hollow of a child who had never lived for herself. Affection became conditional expectation. Attention hardened into pressure. So when she came of age, she carried a fierce longing to be loved truly for herself, not the spotlight, not the fame, but the vulnerable person behind those sorrowful eyes. That longing would lead her to Robert Wagner, the man she believed was destiny, and the shadow tied to the greatest tragedy of her life. From a studio-raised child star, Natalie Wood quickly became an A-list name in her teens. Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. With James Dean vaulted her into legend. As Judy the girl caught between the craving for love and a family's harshness, Natalie seemed to be telling her own youth. Critics praised the honesty. Audiences wept. A new Hollywood star had arrived. In the years that followed, she secured her position with enduring works. Splendour in the Grass, 1961, which earned her an Oscar nomination, and The Pinnacle, West Side Story, 1961, where she became an emblem of love and sacrifice. The public called her a screen goddess, delicate beauty, eyes that spoke. To audiences, Natalie embodied innocence and gentleness, yet could erupt with emotional force. But that radiance was a mask. Behind the Hollywood princess stood a woman often submerged in loneliness. She was squeezed into a mold, always perfect, always gentle, always the pure icon fans demanded. The pressure of fame exhausted her, but she could not step off the path. Her career had become not just passion but a burden laid on her since childhood. The press hailed Natalie Wood as proof of the American dream. But when the applause faded, she sat alone in a dark room, sometimes staring into the mirror and asking, "Does anyone truly know who I am beyond these roles?" In that emptiness, Robert Wagner entered a handsome, accomplished leading man, the partner everyone agreed was her perfect match. To Natalie, Wagner was not just a lover, but the promise of a love that might fill the void. She did not yet see that this love would also draw a shadow across her life. Robert Wagner stepped into Natalie Wood's life like a ready-made romantic role. He was dashing, poised, a bright star of the 1,952nd screen. The public saw them as a dream couple, a Hollywood princess and a gallant prince. When they first married in 1957, all of Hollywood applauded. The press called it a fairy tale wedding. Natalie, barely in her 20s, believed she had found the man who would shelter her tender, love-hungry heart. Real life, however, wasn't a movie. After the lavish parties and flawless magazine spreads, cracks appeared in the marriage. Wagner was jealous, quick-tempered, sometimes controlling. Natalie was sensitive, easily hurt, prone to tears and to swallowing her pain in silence. They loved fiercely, but fought fiercely too, two flames colliding within closed walls. Arguments left scars on Natalie's already fragile heart, haunted by childhood fears of abandonment. In 1962, they divorced. Hollywood buzzed. The golden couple splits. Once more, Natalie felt unmoored between her career and a fractured heart. Yet fate hadn't finished. In 1972, Wagner and Natalie remarried. Like a play that refused to end, they came back to each other, believing maturity could conquer the past. The public called it a rekindled love. For Natalie, it was also a gamble. In the years that followed, their love was a boat at sea. At times, calm and full of laughter. At others, pitched by jealousy and heavy silences. Wagner remained the man who intoxicated Natalie and the one who made her cry more than anyone else. Close friends whispered that she lived in a cycle. Love, fear, silence, then love again. She had chances to leave, but the hunger for the affection she'd never fully had as a child made it hard to cut loose. To her, Wagner was both harbor and storm, and like a tragic heroine, Natalie chose to stay, hoping love would be a life buoy even as, in reality, it drew her closer to the brink. When the fateful yacht trip of 1981 began, no one imagined it would be the final act. But all the jealousy, the silences, the unresolved knots accumulated over the years sailed out with them until that night, when the water became witness to one of Hollywood's most haunting tragedies. On the 28th of November 1981, Natalie Wood, her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and Captain Dennis Davern boarded the Splendour and left Catalina's harbor. It was meant to be a peaceful getaway, but tension hung in the air as soon as the boat cleared the shore. Natalie and Wagner quarreled more than once, and the presence of Walken, her handsome co-star at the time, only stoked the slow-burning embers of jealousy. That night, waves slapped the hull and ocean wind hissed across the wooden deck. In the main cabin, wine swirled in glasses. Conversation rose and fell into weighty pauses. Later, Captain Davern would testify that he heard a heated argument between Natalie and Wagner. Words piled on words, objects striking. Then sudden silence, as if a thick curtain had dropped over the cabin. Sometime after midnight, Natalie was gone. The inflatable dinghy tied to the side was missing too. Wagner said he thought she might have taken the dinghy for a ride. But the night was cold, the sea rough, and most importantly, everyone in Hollywood knew how deeply she feared water. The story didn't fit. Ambiguous details drifted in, cloaking the truth in fog. At sunrise, Natalie's body was found not far from the yacht. She wore a nightgown and a light life jacket. Her face looked heartbreakingly serene. The news exploded worldwide. Hollywood darling lost at sea. Headlines blared, "Accident or hidden truth?" The official investigation concluded at the time that Natalie died by accidental drowning, but bruises on her body, conflicting statements from Wagner and Davern, and Natalie's well-known fear of water seeded a persistent public doubt. People whispered, was it really just a misstep? Did love, jealousy, alcohol, and long-shadowed grievances converge that night and pull her beneath the cold waves? Hollywood reeled. Fans couldn't accept that a star who had graced Broadway and blazed on the screen could depart in such sorrow. Friends and colleagues were shaken. From that day on, Natalie Wood's story was no longer just a love story. It became one of cinema's enduring mysteries. The question lingered, why did no one reach for Natalie's hand as she moved out of the deck's light? Why did that ocean night leave only the sound of waves while the truth sank like a lost ship? When Natalie Wood's body was recovered, the press swarmed Catalina. Headlines multiplied, "Screen goddess dies in the night sea." Natalie Wood's tragedy, accident, or something darker? Police opened an investigation, but an initial ruling came quickly. Accidental drowning. The case closed with unusual speed, like hundreds of other accidents, except this victim was a global icon. The public, however, did not let go. Scattered details surfaced. Bruises on her body. Contradictions between Robert Wagner's account and Captain Dennis Davern's. Some claimed they heard arguing. Others said the deck lights flickered through the night. Each fragment was another piece that only blurred the picture further. Wagner, the husband, and the last person with Natalie, swiftly became the focus of suspicion. He denied all accusations, insisting it was a terrible accident. But the world kept asking, why would a woman who feared water step into a dinghy alone on an icy, turbulent night? Years later, the case was reopened. Investigators reviewed additional evidence. Captain Davern revised his statements, implying Wagner's involvement. In 2011, Natalie Wood's case was officially re-examined, and Robert Wagner was named a person of interest. No one was charged, but a permanent cloud of doubt settled over his name. The fallout reached far beyond the inquiry. Natalie's funeral drew thousands. Friends, colleagues, and fans crowded together in tears. They sang songs from West Side Story, as if to bid farewell to a piece of their youth that vanished with her. Yet grief mingled with anger. Hollywood had lost a beloved star, and justice seemed forever incomplete. Natalie's death became one of Hollywood's most tenacious enigmas, a verdict by society that hung for decades, not on legal paper, but in unanswered questions, leaving a wound in the hearts of those who loved her. Even though she left in a haze of tragedy, Natalie Wood lives on in memory as one of the 20th century's brightest stars. The image of Maria in West Side Story, the fragile gaze and splendor in the grass, they still bring audiences to tears. In every role, she breathed truth, as if she poured her entire heart onto the screen, and that is why her art endures. But her legacy is more than cinema. Her life, from a pressured childhood to storm-tossed love to a death at sea, reflects the vulnerability of women inside a ruthless industry. She stands as proof that behind Hollywood's glow are shadows powerful enough to sweep away a life. Today, when people speak of Natalie Wood, they remember not only the sad eyes and radiant smile, but the question left unresolved: what truly happened that night? It is precisely that mystery that keeps her story from fading, turning it into one of Hollywood's most haunting legends. Natalie Wood leaves behind a career unfinished yet dazzling, and a lesson about love, fame, and the fragility of being human. Amid Hollywood's roaring tide, her legacy is like a lighthouse, beautiful, sorrowful, and forever shining in our collective memory.